It's a knife fight, and you're going to lose. You've been in fights before. You know how this goes. The other guy steps in, his right hand comes forward, and your body already knows where the blade will be. You felt that angle 100 times, except this time, nothing lands where it should. His blade comes from the wrong side. His weight shifts the wrong way. Every instinct you own is firing one beat too late, because the man in front of you is doing all of it backwards. He's left-handed. And in the next few seconds, that single fact might be the reason you never see morning. So why does that hand exist at all? Here's the strange thing. By every rule evolution plays by, left-handers should not be here. Roughly 1 in 10 people is left-handed. That number barely moves. Not across countries, not across cultures, not across tens of thousands of years. It's weirdly stubbornly stable. And that's a problem. Left-handedness runs in families. It gets passed down, and it comes with real costs baked in. A trait like that, one that carries a downside and gets inherited, should slowly get erased. Squeezed out, gone. It wasn't. Something has been protecting it. Something kept a 1 in 10 minority alive for as long as we've been human. And the leading answer is a little unsettling. Maybe left-handers survived because they were dangerous. For most of history, we had a simpler explanation for lefties. They were wrong, not dangerous, defective, unlucky, a little cursed. The word sinister literally started out as the plain Latin word for left. Somewhere along the way, it picked up a second job meaning evil, and it never gave that job back. In French, gauche still means both left and clumsy. Teachers used to strap kids' left hands to the desk to fix them, like you'd fix a wobbly chair. So the story we told ourselves was easy. Left-handedness is a defect, a rare little glitch. Rare things are scary, and that's that. Neat. Also almost certainly backwards. Because a defect doesn't behave the way left-handedness behaves. A glitch would come and go, flare up in one group, vanish in another. This doesn't. It sits at that same stubborn 10% everywhere anyone has ever counted. That's not the fingerprint of a mistake. That's the fingerprint of something being held in place. On purpose, by pressure we couldn't see. Okay, this is where it gets weird. To understand why lefties stuck around, you have to understand a rule that sounds like a riddle. Some traits are useful only as long as almost nobody has them. Scientists have an ugly name for this, so let's just call it the rarity bonus. The idea is simple. A trait can win precisely because it's rare, and it wins less and less the more common it gets. The advantage isn't in the trait, it's in the surprise. Think about a soccer team that only ever practices against right-footed strikers. They get very, very good at defending right-footed strikers. Then one lefty walks on and curls it into the top corner because nobody in that squad has muscle memory for him. Now imagine every team on Earth only trains against righties. That lefty is a problem everywhere he goes. But here's the catch that makes the whole thing balance. If lefties ever got common, say, half the population, the surprise evaporates. Everyone would grow up used to them. The bonus disappears the moment it stops being rare. So the trait can never take over. It can only ever hover at the edges. Useful, uncommon, permanent. A minority that survives by staying a minority, which is a genuinely strange way to exist. Stay with me. This is the good part. In the 1990s, a group of French researchers took that idea and pointed it straight at human violence. Their proposal has a blunt name, the fighting hypothesis. It goes like this. For most of human history, disputes got settled up close and personal. Fists, clubs, spears, knives, bodies. In a fight like that, a left-hander is a nightmare to face. You've spent your whole life sparring against righties. Their attacks come from a direction your brain has mapped. A lefty's come from the mirror image. His guard is on the wrong side. His strike lands from an angle you never rehearsed. And in a fight, being one beat slow is the whole ballgame. Rare enough to be a shock, deadly enough to matter. That, the theory says, is the bonus that kept lefties alive. Now, I want to be honest here, because guessing about the past is exactly how you end up believing nonsense. This is a hypothesis, a well-argued one, still argued over. Some researchers find the evidence convincing. Others think it's thin. Nobody has a time machine to go count knife fights in the Stone Age. But here's the part nobody puts in the textbooks. We can test the surprise idea right now without any cavemen at all. Just watch professional sports. In sports where two people directly face off, fencing, boxing, tennis, baseball, left-handers show up far more often than 1 in 10. In some elite corners, the number climbs toward half. And in sports where you don't face an opponent at all, like gymnastics, that edge vanishes completely. No opponent, no surprise, no bonus. Same pattern, same rarity, playing out on ESPN instead of a battlefield. Let's go back to that fight for a second, because the science only lands if you feel it. You're squared up against someone. Your body is running a program you never chose and never think about. Thousands of hours of watching, flinching, blocking, all of it built around a world of right-handers. When their shoulder drops, you already know the punch is coming from your left. You don't decide to block, you just do. It's automatic, it's fast. Now the mirror walks in, his shoulder drops, and your body braces for the wrong side. The blow comes from where your guard isn't. And the terrible part isn't that he's stronger or faster. He isn't. It's that your own reflexes, the ones that kept you alive against everyone else, are now working against you. They're firing at ghosts. Every shortcut your brain built is suddenly a trap. That's the whole thing. A lefty didn't have to be a better fighter. He just had to be an unfamiliar one, in a world where unfamiliar got you killed. The advantage lived in your head, not his fist. Multiply that across 100,000 years of close-quarters human violence, and you start to see why a rare hand might have been worth keeping around. So the modern version checks out. But that still leaves the big question. Were left-handers actually more common where life was more violent, the way the theory predicts? Someone went and looked. The same French team compared traditional societies around the world and lined up two numbers: how many people in each group were left-handed, and how violent that group was, measured by its homicide rate. If the fighting idea held, the deadlier places should have more lefties. That's roughly what they found. In the most peaceful societies they studied, left-handers sat near 3%. In the most warlike, the number climbed as high as 27. The more dangerous the world, the more southpaws in it. Let that sit for a second. Now, the careful voice in the room has to say this out loud. That's a correlation, not a confession. Two things moving together doesn't prove one caused the other. And this study has its critics. It's one line of evidence, not a verdict. Anyone selling you certainty about hand preference 40,000 years ago is selling you something. But it lines up, doesn't it? The rarity bonus, the sports, the violence. 3 different windows, and through each one you see the same shape. A trait that pays off when the world gets rough and fades when it calms down. If that's true, then lefties weren't the cursed ones. They were the insurance policy nobody realized they were carrying. There's one more wrinkle, and it's the kind that makes the whole theory feel real instead of tidy. The lefty edge only works up close. Fist, blade, club. The range where a surprised angle actually changes who walks away. But the moment humans invented weapons that kill from a distance, the math starts to shift. A spear thrown across a clearing doesn't care which hand you favor. An arrow doesn't get confused by a mirrored stance. Point a gun, and the southpaw's ancient advantage means nothing at all. So the fighting edge belongs to a very specific world. A world where violence was intimate. Where you settled things within arm's reach. Where the person trying to hurt you was close enough to smell. And that was most of human history. For hundreds of thousands of years, up close was the only way there was. No police, no distance, no stepping back and calling it off. Here's what that predicts. As soon as long-range weapons spread, the pressure keeping lefties around should ease off. The bonus fades. And that's roughly what researchers expect to see in the last few violent traditional societies still around to study. As guns and distance and outside money arrive, the old fighting advantage quietly stops mattering and the numbers drift back down, which is a haunting thing to picture. The lefty in your life is a living echo of an era when the most dangerous thing in the world was another human being, standing far too close, holding something sharp. Their hand is a fossil of that intimacy. And it gets stranger the further back you go, because none of this is new. Not remotely. Handedness is one of the oldest things about us, and we can prove it in the weirdest way. Fossil teeth. Here's the trick. Your ancestors used their front teeth like a spare hand. They'd clamp one end of a strip of meat or hide in their teeth, grab the other end with a fist, and saw through the middle with a stone blade. And every so often, that blade slipped and scraped across the teeth, leaving a tiny scratch. Those scratches have a direction. A right-hander slant one way, a lefty's slant the other. which means a chipped tooth can quietly tell you across a million years which hand held the knife. So we looked, and the oldest set of scratches we've found points right on an early human ancestor from roughly 1.8 million years ago. Fast forward to the Neanderthals, our stocky cousins, and about 9 in 10 of them were right-handed too. The same ratio as us, almost exactly 1 in 10 going the other way. No other animal does this, by the way. Your dog has a favored paw, sure, but flip a coin on which one. Only humans as a whole species lean this hard in one direction. It's tangled up with how our brains split their jobs, the same wiring that gave us language. Which means the lefty minority isn't a modern quirk. It rode with us the entire way. For every single generation that ever picked up a weapon, there was always a small, unpredictable slice of people who swung from the wrong side. And that's a long time to be quietly dangerous. Here's a small, strange piece of proof that our ancestors were mostly right-handed, and they left it on the walls. Crawl into certain painted caves, and you'll find hand stencils. Someone pressed a palm to the rock and blew a mouthful of colored dust around it, leaving a ghost of their hand behind. Thousands of years old. And when you count them up at a site like the Cave of the Hands in Argentina, most of the stencils are of the left hand. Think about why. To make the print, you hold your palm flat against the wall with one hand and do the messy, skilled spraying with the other. The hand on the wall is the one you can spare. So a wall full of left-hand prints is a wall made almost entirely by right-handed people, spraying with the hand they trusted. It's a 30,000-year-old survey, and it says the same thing every modern survey says, 9-1. So the minority was always there, always visible, always a little apart. And that, I think, is where the fear came from. Because here's the uncomfortable twist. All that language we built around the left hand, sinister, unlucky, unclean, cursed, maybe it wasn't random cruelty. Rare things unsettle us. And a rare person who happened to be harder to fight, harder to predict, harder to read across a fire, that's exactly the kind of person a nervous group invents stories about. We may have called them evil for the same reason we called them dangerous. They didn't move like us. Let that sit for a second. But being the dangerous one was never a free gift. There was a bill, and lefties paid it. Remember, this whole thing only works because the trait carries a downside. That's the price that keeps it rare. Across a lot of studies, left-handedness tends to travel with a slightly rougher deal, a touch more risk of certain health and developmental problems on average across big populations. Not a curse, not a doom, just a faint, real cost that nudges the numbers. And then there's the cost we handed them ourselves. For centuries, being born left-handed meant being corrected, retrained. In plenty of classrooms within living memory, a left-handed child had that hand tied down or slapped away until they wrote properly. We took a trait that may have once kept our ancestors alive and spent generations trying to scrub it out of children. Nuns did it. Schoolmasters did it. Loving parents did it, convinced they were helping. A hand that might have won a fight in the Stone Age became, in the schoolroom, a habit to break. That's the grim comedy of it. The exact quirk that might have saved your great-great ancestor in a fight got a kid in 1950s Ohio wrapped across the knuckles. And here's the quiet irony to sit with. The reason we could afford to punish left-handedness at all is that the fight stopped. When your worst daily threat is a spreadsheet, not a spear, the surprise in a southpaw's swing stops mattering. The bonus goes dormant. The danger was never in the hand. It was in the world that hand was born into. And then it gets gentler. So think about the left-handers in your own life. The friend who smears every pen. The kid who had to fight the scissors, the desks, the whole world built at a right-hander's angle. The uncle whose signature slants funny because someone, decades ago, tried to make it slant the other way. They're carrying something old. Older than writing, older than the words we invented to insult it. 10%. The same 10% our ancestors carried into every dark, dangerous night they ever survived. For hundreds of thousands of years, our species walked through a world that was trying to kill it. And it kept, in every generation, a small handful of people who moved differently, who fought from the wrong side, who caught the danger off guard. We don't know for certain that it saved us. But we survived long enough to be here, arguing about it, and they were with us the whole way. They were the ones who moved wrong when moving wrong meant surviving. The unpredictable 10%, tucked into every tribe, every generation, every close and frightening night. The people we called cursed may have been part of the reason we made it at all. 300,000 years later, you're still doing it. Funny how that works. So tell me, are you a lefty or do you love one? And do you think our ancestors feared that hand because it was unlucky or because it was hard to beat? I'll be reading the comments.